It's Twitter Tuesday on the Locked On Giants podcast. We're talking about Daniel Jones. We're talking about the playoffs. We've got a whole bunch of topics to cover on today's listener mailbag. That's coming your way next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than the Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times the amount of your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Hello, New York Giant fans. Welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On podcast family, your team every day. I'm Patricia Traynor, your host. It is a Twitter Tuesday, which means we've got your questions on tap, and there's about 20 questions, some of which have multiple questions, so we're going to roll right through all of them and try and get them all answered for you. So let's jump right in and not waste any time, shall we? All right, let's kick it off. Up first, we hear from Andrew G., who has a two-part question. I saw a report on BBC that that would be Daniel Jones, might be getting tendered soon. Is there any truth to that? Also, on the current roster that will be free agents, who would you like back and not back? All right, Andrew, thanks for kicking things off on this Twitter Tuesday. Regarding your second question, I've said this before, I'll say it again. As long as the Giants are still active on a weekly basis, I will not be looking at the draft. I will not be looking at free agency. Right now, my focus is on the upcoming game against Minnesota. So too soon for those questions, Andrew. I promise once the Giants are done playing week to week, whether that be after this week or next week or maybe after some date in February, I promise we will talk about all that stuff. So hold those questions about the draft and about free agency until such time, and then I'll be happy to answer them. Now, regarding the report about Daniel Jones, for those who missed it, WFAN, which is the flagship station of the New York Giants, had a report this morning that the Giants and Daniel Jones were close to agreeing to a multi-year deal. But if you listen to the clip, there sounded like there was some hesitation, meaning it didn't sound like it was finalized. So anyway, long story short, a person with knowledge of the situation reached out to me because I had written an article over on Giants Country about it, reporting what had been reported. And the person who would know if something is going to be done or not, basically said to me that there was no truth to the report. It was an erroneous report. And that is why the article is no longer up on Giants Country. You know, I try and give you guys, factual stuff wherever I can. I try to be accurate wherever I can. So when those rare occasions come up, when when I have incorrect information, I can't leave it out there in good consciousness. So according to this source, like I said, no truth to that rumor. So hope that answers your question. Thank you, Andrew, for the question. All right. Up next, we hear from K-Sal, I guess is how you pronounce it. Of course, there are many factors to be considered, but what is the single most important thing the Giants need to focus on about Sunday's game? Not making mistakes. I think that's got to be number one. So if you go back and you look at the week, I think it was the week 16 game when the Giants played the Vikings, I firmly believe the Giants beat themselves in that game. They made mistakes. They had turnovers, penalties, drop passes. That's got to be all cleaned up. I would be shocked if the game plan changes all that much, but certainly the mistakes has to be cleaned up if they want to win. They're just not good enough. They've proven this time and time again that they are not good enough to overcome their mistakes. So that would be probably the most important factor, if, in my opinion. All right. Up next, we hear from Michael Tauber. Do you think Kenny Golladay will get more reps in the playoffs? You know what, Mike? I'd say probably, you can't say never. Never say never. That being said, if I'm the coaching staff, I might stick with what's worked with Daniel Jones, which is the trio of Hodgins, Slayton, and Richie James. Will Kenny Golladay get some snaps? I could see that being the case. Even though they run the risk of, if he gets hurt, now they will probably have to end up with an injury settlement if they want to cut him, which cuts into their cap savings. So there is a drawback to playing him. But yeah, I mean, I think they're going to probably have him active, but I don't know necessarily that he's going to get, a lot of targets. Will he get a lot of snaps? Probably not, because who are you going to sit in his place? So my guess is probably not. So thanks for the question. All right. AJ asks, as I look back to Eli Manning's first 4 years, I think Daniel Jones is a better quarterback than him at this point in their careers. Eli had a better team to play with on both sides of the ball. Thoughts? You know what, AJ? I think that's a fair statement to make. Eli Manning also had the same system to play in and the same coaching staff pretty much to work with for the first 4 years of his career. So he was able to grow and progress. Daniel Jones has had to start over time and time again. Now, that being said, he's finally kind of hit his groove. So you could make the argument that he's been better than Eli was at this point in his career. But I think what's really going to separate Daniel Jones in the minds of the people who still want to see him run out of town is he's going to have to win a few playoff games before I think people fully embrace him and stop with this, he's trash, he's this, he's that. Daniel Jones has done more with less than any quarterback I can ever remember. He has elevated the talent around him. Just look at the receivers. It hasn't been perfect, but look, you got to give credit where it's due, and he hasn't been that bad. So I think that's why I would not be surprised if Daniel Jones is brought back after this season. So thanks for that question. All right, up next we hear from Brad at BCast1207. Think Wink Martindale gets some interviews this offseason. You know what? I'm going to say probably not. And the reason why I'm going to say probably not is that this is his first year with the Giants in the defensive coordinator role. He has, obviously he's been in DC before with Baltimore, but he was never really a hot name, even when he was with the Ravens. Interestingly, the Giants interviewed him, before they hired Joe Judge. So I'm going to say probably not this year. But again, you never know. Sometimes, the unexpected pops up, and lo and behold, now you've got teams interested in him. So look, if Wink wants to be a head coach, God bless him. Let him pursue it. I'd have no problem with that. I'd hate to see him leave, but you can't hold back a guy from pursuing, a promotion. So thanks for the question. Okay. Next we hear from Dan/Rod. What are the 2 to 3 biggest differences between the last Minnesota game and this one? Which do you feel has the most impact? And he goes on to write, my thoughts are injury returns. Adoree X 11 personnel shift to the passing game. Dan, we don't know as I record this if Adoree is going to be back. I did not get a warm and fuzzy feeling hearing him post game. Some of the things he had to say about, whether or not he'd be back, kind of still taking it day by day. The return of McKinney is certainly big. I think, coming up with a better plan to stifle, TJ Hawkinson, their tight end, is going to be key, which could be in a bigger role for Landon Collins. I could also see Gerard Davis, the linebacker that they picked up a couple weeks ago, who played in the regular season finale, maybe cutting into some of Michael McFadden's snaps. So those would probably be some of the biggest differences that I think are going to be in this week's game as opposed to the one from week 16. And hopefully, it works out for them, whatever changes they make, because, hey, I'm starting to believe they could go and win this game. So thanks for that question. All right, let's see. John Spielman asks, Giants game plan against Minnie almost got the W. Do you expect the same game plan with minor tweaks, or does Dable and staff surprise the Vikings and alter their game plan significantly? John, I think they're probably going to keep most of the same game plan. As I mentioned before, what kind of did them in were mistakes. So I think they keep most of the same game plan. Now, will there be tweaks? Absolutely. Will there be maybe a few different matchups? Absolutely. But I don't think Dable is going to go back and reinvent the wheel. Matter of fact, I asked him about that on the call, because I'm going to do an article on Giants Country about what I think is going to change this time around versus the last time. So that's something, I haven't started that article yet, but so I don't have a summary or anything in my mind, but I have a few ideas that I jotted down, and you'll just have to check it out on Giants Country when it comes out. So thanks for the question, John. All right, folks, we're going to take our first break here. We'll be right back with more of your questions on Twitter Tuesday. Hey, Giant fans, playing daily fantasy based on player projections has never been easier when you visit prizepicks.com. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you win up to 10 times the amount of your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada, and they offer projections on every sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and Prize Picks offers safe and fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up at prizepicks.com. Hey, Giant fans, TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of preparing your taxes and filing them by the deadline so that you can enjoy life without having to lose sleep at night over whether your tax returns were filed, whether they were received, whether they were done correctly. That's right. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring that your taxes are done right, guaranteed. Visit turbotax.com/guarantees to learn more. Video meeting is required during tax preparation. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. See turbotax.com for additional terms and conditions. All right, everybody, welcome back to Twitter Tuesday here on the Locked On Giants podcast. I am your host, Patricia Traina. And before we get into the next round of questions here in this segment, just want to give you a heads up for tomorrow's show. My special guest is former NFL GM Michael Lombardi, who gave some wonderful insight into contracts. We talked about Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley. So we had a nice interview. It was taped last week, but we're going to run that interview for you tomorrow. Then on Thursday, the crossover series continues, as it will for as long as the Giants are alive in the playoffs. Luke Braun, who is the host of Locked On Vikings, you might remember him from a few weeks ago. He will be back, and this time I think I'm going to be hosting the show as opposed to him hosting the show. Excuse me. So that is on Thursday, and then either Thursday night or Friday, Locked On Giants Live with Tana and Bad Dog, and of course yours truly, Traina. So busy week here on the Locked On Giants podcast, as always. And don't forget also subscribe and like the channel if you're watching on YouTube, so you get notifications on any shorts or new videos that I post. So this way you will never miss an update. So again, thank you for making us your first listen of the day, or watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Let us go back Now to your questions on Twitter Tuesday. All right, up next, we hear from Babylon55, who writes, so proud of Daniel Jones's growth this season and excited about the future. However, can you talk a little bit about Julian Love's contributions this year and his future with the Giants? All right, I'm so glad you asked that question. I absolutely think Julian Love is probably one of the most underrated players and has been one of the most underrated players on this team since basically he's been drafted. He has been, a solid locker room presence, a leader. He's developed into quite the leader. He's done a good job on the field for them, wearing multiple hats. With McKinney out, he wore the green dot, so he was, in charge of the calling the signals in. I do think the Giants want Julian Love back. There was, I believe, over the bye week when the Giants talked about, they met with certain representatives of certain free agents that are pending to discuss contracts, and Julian Love was one of the ones that whose agents met with the Giants. So I do think they want him back, and I don't know what kind of money he would necessarily draw, but nor do I know if he necessarily wants to test the market. But I do know the Giants want him back, and rightfully so. He's a good guy, a good locker room presence. What's not to like with him, right? So thanks for the question. All right, up next, James A. has several questions, actually. Which backups in the Eagles game made a case to get some playoff reps? How did Gates do at center versus the Eagles? Is he going back to center? Is he going to keep his left guard rotation? And excuse me, anyone aside from Adoree Jackson, who didn't play versus the Vikings the first time coming back, that you are excited about? All right, so we have backups. I'm just jotting this down here. Gates and returnees. All right, how to write this down so that, I remember what the questions are. When there's multiple questions like that, sometimes I forget them. Okay, from the backups, well, remember, not all of the backups played. You did have some guys, that were on the field that are normally on the field with the quote unquote starters, like Nick McLeod was on the field. Micah McFadden was on the field. I'm trying to think. Kenny Golladay, even though he doesn't get a lot of snaps, he was on the field. Matt Breida, Gary Brightwell. To answer your question, I'd like to see more of Breida and Brightwell, especially Brightwell, who, I thought he ran really well. So I would like to see more of him in the offense. Now, I get it. Saquon's going to get the lion's share, as he should. But no reason why you can't see if maybe Brightwell can be the answer, the number 2 guy to Saquon, especially since Breida is unsigned, I believe, after this year. So I'd like to see him get some more reps. Regarding the question about Nick Gates, John Feliciano is expected back. Unless his injury prohibits that. So I do think Gates will probably stay with the rotation with Ben Bredesen at left guard. All right. And then the returning players that didn't play last time. Again, we don't know if Adoree Jackson is going to play just yet. McKinney, I believe, was a returnee. And I think that was it. I don't remember the injury report, if I'm being honest with you. I know it was only a couple of weeks ago, but I don't remember the injury report. So I'm not sure who else to name other than, McKinney. And like I said, maybe if Adoree Jackson does come back, I think that would be a welcome addition for the Giants. But right now, as I record this on a Monday night, I don't know if Adoree is going to definitely play this week. I think the plan with Adoree is they're going to practice him really hard this week, see if he can go and take his full reps, and then from there make a decision as to whether or not he can be activated to play on Sunday against the Vikings. So thanks for the question. Okay, we did this question here, so let me get rid of that one. All right, up next we hear from Firecracker. Do you think Galladay playing 100% of the snaps is worth noting, especially considering the touchdown catch? If you mean worth noting as in will he get more snaps? It's possible. I don't know what the game plan is just yet. But certainly I'm sure the coaches took note of what he did, and anything's possible. I still think, though, if I'm being honest with you, you stick with the same three that Daniel Jones has been working with and having some success with. But look, if you can get Kenny Galladay into the mix and target him and say like a jump ball, a contested catch situation, especially in the red zone or in the end zone, why not? Why not do it? So that's how I see that playing out. Okay, next question's from Bobby at Montreal Design. Think we'll try an onside kick to start the game. Bobby. Listen, anything's possible with this coaching staff. I mean, did you think they were going to run a fake punt? Did you think they were going to do an onside kick to start the second half? I didn't. But no, seriously, Bobby. I mean, if they were going to experiment, last week was the week to do it. The game didn't mean anything. Now that the game means something, you don't want to be too cute. So I know, by the way, your question was tongue in cheek, but I wanted to throw it in there anyway. All right. Next question comes from Jonathan S. I think this is Jonathan Schmidt, actually. In the wake of DeMar Hamlin's situation, do you think we might see some early retirements this offseason from players reconsidering if it's worth it to play football in the NFL? Um, hmm, Probably not. And the reason why I say that is I think what you might see is a lot of players will really, take note of what their physical condition is. I would think concussions would probably be more of a driving force to early retirements. Um, but look, everybody's different. It's kind of hard to say that, there's going to be a run on guys that are going to retire because of what happened to DeMar Hamlin, who, by the way, as of last check, he was released from the Cincinnati hospital and on his way back to Buffalo. So, yay, I'm so happy for him. I really am. That young man, what an ordeal he's been through, and he's just proven he's a fighter. And God bless him. I hope he continues to make a full and complete recovery. But yeah, I don't know if that situation per se is going to give pause to some of the players. Maybe if anything else, it'll set them for deeper physicals to make sure that they are indeed in tip top shape and that something, freaky can't happen to them. But I would think concussions is probably still what would drive people to consider retiring or not retiring or whatever. So that's just my guess. So, but it's a good question. Certainly a good question. All right. Next question is from Ken Peters. Nice that Galladay caught a farewell touchdown, but now that the regular season is over, can the Giants release him and avoid the regular season salary cap issues? I thought perhaps this is why they added Sills to the practice squad last week. Ken, if they're going to release Galladay, which I think is basically going to happen, can't happen until the year is over, and that's the postseason. If they release him, even though it's weird, he would still count for the $4 million against the cap, the $4 million that's guaranteed to him next year. So you kind of have to wait until the new league year in order to make a clean break or as clean of a break as possible. So no, I don't see them releasing Kenny Galladay now that the regular season's over. And again, with the salary cap, now that we're in the playoffs, every player gets the same salary. All right, unless he has a clause in his contract stating otherwise. So I don't know what off the top of my head what the number is, but the winners of the wild card games get one rate, and the losers get another. So whether it's 45 for the winner and 30 for the loser. I don't know what the numbers are off the top of my head, but that's kind of how it works. And that money doesn't count towards the salary cap unless the player has some kind of incentive in his contract related to the postseason. So, yeah, Galladay's not going anywhere just yet. So you're just going to have to be patient. All right, folks, we have roughly 6 or 7 more questions left. We will get to those right after this. Hey, Giant fans, BetOnline is your number one source for football betting information this season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game during the playoffs. And BetOnline doesn't stop there. It's your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including NBA, NHL, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head on over to BetOnline right now or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the games start. Hey, Giant fans, thanks so much for making a Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you the local insights that you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I am Patricia Traina, and before I get to these last few questions here on Twitter Tuesday, I want to thank everybody who sent in questions. We usually have a steady stream of the same people who send in questions, and they are appreciated. Those of you who are sending in questions for the first time, appreciated. And I also want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers, especially to the Locked On Giants YouTube channel. Already, I think we're at 5.2 thousand subscribers, and I gotta get something together for you guys. I said I would do it. Probably going to do it in the off season, but you guys, I can't thank you enough for the support. The channel has grown really, really well, and I never ever thought it would be, have this kind of response. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for making Locked On Giants so successful. And let's get back to your questions here on Twitter Tuesday. All right. Eli San says, our special teams has gone wrong. Is it the coaching gone wrong? But every year we have been on a decline. Do you see Dable making a change in the offseason? Eli, I think part of the problem, and this has been a consistent issue for, I can't tell you how many years now, but it's been a while. Injuries. Now, what does injuries have to do with special teams? Well, you have injuries on offense and defense, and now all of a sudden, your core special teams players have to pitch in a little bit more on offense or defense. And now, if you're T-Mac, Thomas McGahee, the special teams coordinator, you're left with guys who maybe aren't as good on specials as what you've lost, who maybe did not play specials in college as much as the guys that you had playing for you before. So that's got to be a factor. I'm not saying that T-Mac and is totally blameless in this. I think he'll be the first to admit that there's enough blame to go around and that he has to coach better. But I think injuries have been the biggest issue. Certainly this year, I know that has been the case. Last year, I wonder how much, the last 2 years, how much did Joe Judge, who of course was the special teams coordinator before being hired as a head, how much maybe was he clashing with T-Mac regarding, their philosophies and whatnot. So that's something you have to take into consideration. Now, is Dable considering a change? Right now, hard to say. But I'm sure at the end of the year, he's going to look at everything and make some decisions. So, I think T-Mac is still a very good special teams coach, but we'll see if he agrees. So, thanks for the question. Okay, let me get rid of that question. We just did Eli again. So let's see. The next one is Andrew B. Um, Selfishly, I hope members of our coaching staff are not poached. Do you think anyone will be serious candidates for head coaching positions? Not this year, Andrew. I don't think after 1 year. I would be very surprised if after 1 year, Kafka and Martindale are poached. Now, could they lose a position coach? Could, maybe Andre Patterson retire? He had some health issues earlier in the year. Yeah, you could, anything's possible. But I don't think that Kafka and Martindale are necessarily going to be poached. I'd be surprised if after 1 year that is the case. So, all right, next up, please log off from. I really got to clip the whole thing to see what this handle is. But people are saying it was a mistake not to exercise Daniel Jones's 5th-year option. But do you think Daniel Jones plays as well as he does this year if his 5th-year option is exercised if his 5th-year option is exercised back in early 2022, do you suspect the chip on his shoulder pushed him to do better? Um, hmm, Interesting question. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because Daniel has always worked his tail off. He has always sought to try and, establish himself as this team's franchise quarterback and leader. So I don't think that has anything to do with it. I really don't. I would be surprised. Daniel's always had a chip on his shoulder. So I don't think declining the deal or the option year really is, made him say, okay, I'm going to show you, or, maybe he did. I don't know, but I don't think he did because Daniel's always been a go-getter. So, I'm happy for him. I'm happy that he's doing well. And quite frankly, I didn't want to have to see this team start over with another quarterback if they didn't have to. So onward and upward, as they say. All right, next question comes from Joe. Now that we seem to have the quarterback situation answered, what's your take on what direction we look in the draft? Joe, again, I'm not talking draft or free agency until after the team is done playing. I haven't done any work on the draft. I haven't done any work on free agency. I couldn't tell you right now 10 players who are going to be in the draft. All right, maybe that's an exaggeration. I could probably tell you about 15 or 20, but I couldn't give you any scouting reports. I promise you guys that once the Giants are done playing, once all the wrap up is done on the season and the postseason for the Giants, I will dive headfirst into the draft stuff and be able to answer what I think is going to happen. So right now, I'm sorry, I just can't go there right now. So please save that question, and in a few weeks, bring it out again, and hopefully by then I'll have an answer for you. So thanks though for participating and sending the question in. Okay, get rid of that overlay. All right, so this next one is from Giants fan, NY Giants News 26. Do you think Gary Brightwell could actually have a future and be Saquon's backup in the future? He looked like he has a burst and explosiveness on Sunday. You know what? I do. I like what I've seen from Gary Brightwell. And look, if they want to move on from Matt Breida, who again is not signed after this year, Brightwell's under contract, so why not give him that opportunity? So yeah, I could see that. I could see that being a possibility. Absolutely. All right. Next question from Dan at DMFKB. Which team do you think has the upper hand in the trenches, offense and defense? All right, Dan, I'm assuming you mean the Giants and the Vikings. The Vikings offensive line is actually banged up. from what I understand. So I'm going to give the nod to the Giants defensive line in that matchup. Flipping it, um, I'm going to say, I'm going to say it's a draw. If Giants offensive line versus Vikings D line, because, Andrew Thomas has been playing lights out. The left guard situation seems to have stabilized some. I am still a little concerned about, the inconsistency shown on the right side. I know Glowinski's been banged up with the back issue. Evan Neal is still not 100% healthy, but, you could always stick a tight end over there to help. And I think Nick Vanette, as a blocking tight end, has done a really good job for them. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna say maybe it's a draw, Giants O line versus Mini's D line, but flipping it, I give the nod to the Giants D line over the Mini O line because of the injuries they have. So thanks for the question. All right, I think we have one more question. This is from John B. at John B. hashtag all lives cannot something or other. Biggest hope and biggest fear. I don't know if you mean, I'm assuming you mean for the game. I think that's what you mean. You didn't specify you meant for the game, for the postseason, for life. So I'm going to go with, for the postseason. My biggest hope is that the Giants win more than one game, that they don't go, one and done. That would be my biggest hope. I'd like to see the Giants get another crack at the Eagles. And I think the way it would play out, and I could be wrong here, but I think, let me see, the 7th seed, which is Seattle, would get the 2nd seed, which is Frisco. I think Frisco will handle Seattle handily. The Giants, of course, as the 6th seed, face the 3rd seed, which is Mini. Giants can win that game. So that means the following week, the Giants, assuming Seattle gets bounced out, the Giants would be the lowest remaining seed. They would get the Eagles. I would like to see that happen. The Giants backups played the Eagles tight this last game. I'm not going to sit here necessarily and say that it's a gimme, but I was encouraged by that game. So I'd like to see the Giants get another crack at the Eagles. And wouldn't it be sweet if the Giants did get that extra crack and knock the Eagles out of the playoffs? Now, my biggest fear is that the Giants, they basically need to play a perfect game, a mistake-free game, because they have shown time again that they are not good enough to overcome their mistakes. My biggest fear is that there will be mistakes and they will be critical and they will hurt their chances of winning. So I know the coaches are going to, work these guys this week. They're going to have a solid game plan on both sides of the ball, but can't have mistakes. And, I asked Stable about this on Monday. I said, how do you kind of keep everybody even keels so that they're not too amped up to where they start pressing? And he talked about his processes. So I really hope that these players, they know what's at stake. And I hope that, they follow these processes and they just don't get too amped up to where now they're making mistakes that they really shouldn't be. So that would be, those are my biggest hopes and fears if we're talking about next week's game. All right, everybody, that is the last of the Twitter Tuesday questions. I want to thank everybody for sending good questions. This was fun as always. Don't forget, again, to keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Michael Lombardi is with me tomorrow. Crossover Thursday with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. And either Thursday or Friday. I think it's going to be Thursday night, but I'll post the notice in YouTube. Trainer, Tana, and Dog. Locked On Giants Live. And Dog is going to be bouncing off the walls, people. I mean, you thought he was bouncing off the walls last week. You ain't seen nothing yet. So hope you will keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you guys and gals tomorrow.